Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey. The Moms I Know is your go-to source for motivation, inspiration, and resources, and real conversation about motherhood and parenting with intention. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
A hybrid independent study program can be a wonderful model for the future.
Hi, this is Sheila.
And this is Maria.
And we want to welcome you to the Moms I Know.
Good morning. Here we are on the Moms I Know podcast, and we are talking about the future of education in our country.
Yes, and wow. It's one that Maria and I have talked about for quite a while, and I am fresh off a task force meeting that we had last night with my daughter's own school, and it's overwhelming. It's confusing, and I really wanted to come on this morning and talk with Maria about, hearing from people in our lives that are grappling with the fact that what's it really going to look like? How is it going to play out? Because what we know, there are some things we do know from our local, and of course these rules are different across the state, across, your school district, right? But the thing is that it will look different. Okay. We did shelter in place since March, and there are definitely there's different levels, and the highest level is shelter in place. But then you go up, and what does that mean? Well, that means 6 feet apart. Does that mean face masks? Does it mean plastic shields? It means kids coming at different times. And so I am so appreciative of our school leadership, because the teachers have been meeting, and they basically have laid out, like a Monday, Wednesday schedule, Tuesday, Thursday schedule, and plus distant learning. And so there's all these things, but there's still so many parameters. And so I asked the question, coming from, you guys have heard about my homeschool story, how Maria was my children's homeschool teacher, how she created an independent studies program. But my question to our leadership was, what about independent studies? And she said that our charter school could allow for 20% independent studies. Now, I have a few questions for you, Maria, and we're going to be discussing this, but the question is, do public schools have that same piece of allowing for independent studies? Because I think independent studies is a viable option, and something that we did successfully for 10 years with your guidance. And so how does it really work? Because what we want to do is really give you ideas in case you decide to be on a task force at your own school, how you can share with your community what you've learned. So, because Maria, she has walked the walk. She did this. She started an independent studies program. So, Maria, tell us.
I want to backtrack just a little bit, because, this really started out of this concept of, you sharing the CDC guidelines of what this is, what this could look like in the fall. I've been talking with a lot of families who are really uncertain about how they want to go forward. We've obviously done all of our work around family school and the homeschooling model, and yet we realize that education is going to look very different in this country and, possibly around the world. But what we've been seeing too, not just with COVID-19, but also with the protests over the past few weeks and over the real upheaval in our society. We're being asked to question everything. So whether it's our healthcare system, our education systems, our military systems, our political and police systems, all of these types of systems that have been put in place, the institutions that we have, everything is being questioned. And, you and I started on this journey of sort of educational differences and different pathways, over 20 years ago. And so this whole concept of how do we look at these things and how do we change things for the better based on the needs of the individual people involved. And I think that's what's happening in this country right now, is we're really listening to each other, and we're hearing what is working, what is not working, and how can we go forward. So here, whether it's about, racial equity, whether it's about social justice, whether it's about our education system, whether it's the healthcare system, how we look at all of these things. And this model that we put together over several decades at the school, at Mountain School in SoCal, California, we started it in 1993, I believe. And it was started out of the need for something different for certain families, primarily my own. But, that's how it started. Was I came to my school district and said, we need to be homeschooling, but we'd like to be homeschooling through the district. So that's how it all began several decades ago. But this idea that we can look at different models, and now with COVID-19, we have to be looking at a different model. And yet we also have to be looking at what's going to work for children and what's going to work for individual families. And all of these families are going to have different needs. And so in sharing the story of how we created this model, we hope that this will give you ideas to go forward. And, we're obviously here to consult with school districts. We're here to consult with families as to how this could look and how it could work. But so anyhow, I just wanted to kind of set that stage before I tell the story. So you wanted to add something there?
Oh, I just wanted to say that you opened with the quote, and I honestly, sincerely remember you saying that. Maria and I, we have the Moms I Know podcast because we talked every month about education, about my children's learning and everything like that. But it always overflowed. And one of the things we would come back to was how children from the classroom were coming into the independent studies classroom. How children, you had a waiting list over 3-4 page. How many pages long was that waiting list? I know it was a couple
pages. Yeah.
And it was And so it's just like, this could be a model for the future, and the times are changing. And what does this emphasize? It emphasizes, family, and homeschooling. And I really also just want to hit on one thing before you tell your story, is that last night during the discussion, there were people, some parents that mentioned it a few times, that if you are doing the distant learning or the homeschooling, it's because of your anxiety. And I just want to just kind of put that there to reframe it, because homeschooling is an amazing choice. It's an amazing opportunity that you get to do if you choose to. It strengthened our family. And here I have an 18-year-old, 16-year-old who tell me, and I know, Maria, you can say the same thing, that we have strong relationships because of the trust built in those early years during homeschooling. And so homeschooling is amazing.
And, I was listening to our interview with Lindsay Hurley recently, and, she homeschooled her kids, and then we were looking kind of back at, and how are they doing now? And she said that she had been talking to her son, and that his comment was that he felt empowered. And I love that, because we're coming from this place of empowerment, empowering families, empowering parents, empowering children to really take charge of their education. And that's what we did in 1993 when we started the program. And what happened was, my son was in the public school classroom, and it was okay in kindergarten, and then first grade did not work out. And so we pulled him out of that necessity to find something different, and we started homeschooling him. But we wanted to be a part of our local school district. We wanted to be a part of the community. So I went to the board and said, if you had a homeschool program, we'd rather be homeschooling through our local school district. And they said, well, that sounds great. Why don't you put a proposal together? So I put a proposal together, and they accepted it. And then they asked if I would head it. And I was kind of laughing, because that wasn't my intention. I just wanted there to be a program that we could go through. But I was a credentialed teacher that had been home with my children for a couple of years. And so it seemed sensible to take that position. And it started with my son and one other child who obviously, the needs of that family were such that she needed to be homeschooled. And by the end of that first year, it had grown to about 7 families. And then each year after that, it just grew and grew to the point where I think we had 31 children in the program. And we then needed to kind of look at really structuring this. And at every point along the way, and it started out just as a homeschool program, I was a mentor to these families, and I would listen, and we would create curriculum together, and we would support the families in the way that seemed best. And then I was listening to the needs of the different families, and people were asking for more social interaction, more curriculum with children together. And so, we came together one morning a week, and then a little while later it went to 2 mornings a week. And then it grew to 2 full days a week where the children were invited to come and be a part of a hybrid program. It was an invitation, not a requirement. So there were families that would be homeschooling full time, or there would be families that would travel periodically. There were other kids that they wanted to be there Tuesday, Friday mornings, and they wanted to take part in some of the activities that were going on, that were part of the school, the art program, the music program, the outdoor science adventures, the science camp things, the things that we have grown to know and love within our school systems, all these things that can be provided because we are coming together as a group. But also the parents really wanted to have more control over the overall curriculum and not be there full time. And so this program over a number of years really evolved by listening to the needs of the families that were a part of it, and also listening to the children. I would listen to the children's ideas and what they wanted more of or less of, what they, loved coming together. And there were other things that parents would say, my child is learning better in the group for this, this, and this, but at home we can provide this, that, and the other. And so really over the 23 years that I was involved with the Mountain School Independent Study Program, it was a continual evolution. Every year was a little different. There would be different themes that would go through. There were different groups of children, different families. And so priorities kind of, came and went. And so I think that when we look at something like this, and along the way, I always had this feeling that this is a model for the future. This is what education really could look like. And as a classroom teacher, watching the beauty of what was happening, this multi-age classroom, kindergarten through 6th grade students living and learning together, parents coming together for field trips, for outings, for thematic things that would happen. I mean, to this day, I still know that the families, children are getting together, as teenagers, as young adults. It's just beautiful to see the bonds that were formed. And the children wanted to have that classroom, that teacher, their cubby, the things that they could come together for. But the families also wanted to have that autonomy and that kind of freedom of choice to do things in a way that really worked for their family and for their individual children. And we know that every child learns differently. And so even within a family, we're bringing curriculum in different ways. And so again, going back to Lindsay's son saying he felt empowered and he took charge of his education. And that's what we see over and over with these young people. And so that independent study kind of hybrid program really can be such an incredible model for the future. And we also saw it work for families that had 2 parents with flexible schedules, or 2 parents that were working, or single parents, or, a single mom, a single dad. It transcended the different sort of socioeconomic groups, obviously the different, racial groups. And so we just saw it work for everyone. And so I really am excited about these possibilities.
I don't want to interrupt. Well, I am interrupting.
That's okay.
Because that's the thing, as we were having the meeting, a friend I said, I think I'm leaning towards independent studies and everything just because of what I've seen and what I know. And she said, there's no way I can do that. That was her immediate response. There's no way I can do that. And the thing is that, can you be more specific with how you saw this with 2 working parents, how you saw this with single parents, how does it really get done?
And there were those people, myself included. I didn't think I could do that. What do you mean? I always thought I'd send my children to school. And so, once we figured out how to do this, then I became a mentor for other people that came to me and they said, their children weren't thriving, or they needed to pull them out, but they didn't know how to do it, or they didn't think they could do it. And so basically, as a mentor, I was a cheerleader for the families to help them understand that, yes, they could do this, and to give them lots of ideas for curriculum. So, I know we're both real advocates for mentors for your children. And, I know that you're doing a lot of mentoring with homeschool families right now, and I'm always there as a consultant to talk about how it can be done. But because of the 2-day-a-week hybrid, there were, especially for the working parents, that was a real blessing, because then their children could come 2 days a week and the parents could work. It wasn't that they felt the need for their children to be home all of the time, but there was flex there, or two parent working families that would share, and, one would work at this time and the other would work at that a different time. And they'd take turns working with their children and caring for them. And I think that that's what we've been seeing now in the past few months with shelter in place. Families have had to get really creative about how to make this work, especially when it's a single working parent or two working parents. And how do we meet the children's needs? How do we meet our own needs? How do we juggle all of this? And so with a hybrid program, there is that flexibility where the children can be in these programs where their needs are being met and they're having fun and they're learning all kinds of things. And the parents are having that time either for themselves or for their work. And then families can share different types of thematic learning on different days. And so I think we've talked in some previous episodes about possibilities like this. There's just a lot of opportunity to get together and be creative. And if one parent has a skill in, say, art, or another is a musician, and they can do different subgroups within. And so, we would even invite parents into the classroom quite often to share their gifts and talents with the children. And so there's just this opportunity for all sorts of sharing to happen. And then the children learn from each other. I can't tell you how many times I would actually be able to kind of sit back and watch the children take charge of things and lead small groups or large groups. And I always felt that I had really succeeded when I was not needed as this person talking to the children or lecturing the children, but that they were just learning from each other and with their own exploration.
And I think that was the beauty of the classroom. When I came to visit before my son was in the program, the beauty of the multi-age classroom, and just the older kids talking to the younger kids, being able to be heard and recognized from these older kids. I think I've mentioned this before, but seeing my kindergartner do folk dancing with a 6th grade girl was like the cutest thing ever. And, just that confidence. And I remember him being a kindergartner and doing hula hooping with the 4th grade girls, and just really not having those boundaries that you can only play with kids your same age. And so that was a real beautiful thing. Going back to some of the limitations, some of the fears that I think people are feeling like I can't do this, is I think you really just have to be creative. And like something that you and I have said is that, anybody can homeschool, but you really have to have the intention to homeschool. So if you want to homeschool, where there's a will, there's a way, right? Everything is figure outable. And I think that's kind of the homeschool motto from Marie Forleo, but everything is figure outable because you have two working parents. So what you do is like what we've heard, you put structure around what is important. How many hours a week do you need to work? So you put those, you might have to get up a little bit earlier. You might have to work a little later, but there will be some flow and learning time, because often what parents need because kids are going to be learning. Kids are natural learners. They're curiosity. And actually, I just did a webinar about that, of how to set up your home for homeschooling, like how to set up a curious home. So if you have that, you're going to have natural learning. But often what parents are looking for is just that space so they can do their own thing. And that's where school, when I sent Juliet, my youngest, to school for the first time, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? There is so much space. And so that's where the independent studies, like the 2 days, that's co-oping in a way. And I know a lot of parents are looking towards co-oping. And I think that's a whole other podcast episode that we can have to give specific tips of how to do best co-oping. But I think the learning pods, the co-oping, there are ways to be creative, and I totally think it's feasible. And I just keep going back to how awesome is it to emphasize family and school, family school. That's what we've been talking about.
And I love, the Marie Forleo quote could be, a sub quote for this episode. Everything is figure outable. And I think that's where we have this opportunity as adults to be talking with our local school boards, to be talking with our school districts, and to be saying, how about this? How about that? And truly, when our family had that need, that is what we did. We went and we said, this is what we would like to be doing, but we'd like to be doing it through our district. And so if parents can come to their districts and say, look, how about this model? Or what do you think about this? And we can figure this out together. We can reimagine what our educational systems could look like. You talked, before we started recording, we were talking about John Taylor Gatto and Dumbing Us Down, the book that he wrote decades ago. You know, he was a New York City teacher who would take his students out into the world. And so when we look at, and then outdoor schools, you know, the forest schools, the outdoor schools that are thriving. And so if we look at reimagining what this looks like, it doesn't have to look like the classroom with kids sitting at desks 6 feet apart with plastic shields and with masks. We can be outdoors. We can be learning everywhere. And so, you know, the drama class can take place out on the grass field. The science class can take place in the garden. You know, we can really reimagine all of these things. And I know many schools have these kinds of things going on already. So now how can we look at this? Lunchtime, instead of the cafeteria being inside, you know, can there be an outdoor type of a thing? And so there's just so many opportunities for creativity and for really looking at, you know, juggling schedules and, you know, could these kids come Monday, Wednesday, and these kids come Tuesday, Thursday, and, you know, Friday could be this day for whatever. And so I just, you know, this is really an invitation for all of you to think about what works best for your family. How can you take the best of what has been happening over these past couple of months with maybe some feelings of, well, maybe we could do this, or if there was a hybrid, or if there was a couple of days a week type of a thing, so that, you know, that our children have the social interaction, they have their peer group, you know, and we, like you said, love the mixed age range, and reimagining a whole different future. And we've seen it. I mean, you know, Sheila and I have lived it. We've loved it. We've seen it in the classroom. We've seen it outside of the classroom. We've seen it work beautifully. And the other thing to reiterate, you know, Lindsay's kids being successful, you know, Sheila's kids, my kids, they're all successful young people living their lives. They are confident. They are not afraid to try new things. And so I think that there can be such gifts that will come of this if we can look at this as a model for the future, a different way of educating our future generations. And so we just want to, you know, it was always so hard for me not to want to shout from the rooftops, this is working so beautifully. These kids are learning. They're getting along. They're listening to each other. They're communicating well. They have good character. So it's just, I'm really excited for the possibilities that are coming with all of this unrest that is happening right now. It's just exciting to see what the future can hold.
It truly is a silver lining. You know, when I think about the independent studies program and everything that you offered, and a real, just to kind of give you guys a quick snapshot, is the thematic learning. You touched on in the beginning of like the thematic learning, where each year Maria would pick a theme. There was a semester or the year, and those themes would carry throughout. And and they were just so, and there were some constants, you know, it's like every spring you had the option to do science fair project, but there was, you know, some of her things I remember you had like, with like language and handwriting, but you would bring in the classic literature. You would bring in, you know, gardening one year, I remember was a big thing, like what's growing in the garden and stuff like that. So there's so many ways to be creative, but as we're winding up here, I think, winding down, I think we're winding down. We're winding down. I
think we're winding up too for a new future.
Right. That I just want to share that what I'm working on is I am doing some free webinars right now on how 7 steps for homeschool success. So if this independent studies, if you want to go a little bit deeper, I'm doing a free webinar, and then I'm actually doing a workshop in July that's going to be all about project-based learning. So those are, you know, 2 ways that can help you. And then Maria and I will also be working on a family school offering probably within the next couple of months as well.
And I think that we're really going to be talking to more and more people about this concept of reimagining what our school systems can look like. And so, you know, Sheila, you've really reignited my passion for this sort of change that is coming. And so we just want you all to know that your children are going to learn no matter what, and that you can take charge of what this is going to look like, and you can share your voices. And so we want to hear from many, many, many of you and hear your ideas as well. But we also want you to get out there. We want you to share your ideas. We want you to listen to each other. We want you to be heard. And so it truly is, even though it's a very challenging time, it's a very exciting time for the possibilities ahead of us. So take care.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To get the show notes and resources mentioned in today's episode, visit themomsiknow.com. For information on Maria's programs, visit thefutureoffamily.com. And for information on Sheila's programs, visit purplebeatfamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes, and follow us on Instagram at The Moms I Know Podcast. Until next time, have a joyful family journey.